why would President Trump do that? Why would he praise President Erdogan, and why would he lift the sanctions and sell F-35s to Erdogan? It's called a bribe. We are bribing President Erdogan and the Turks to stay out of the war with Israel. We want them to sit on the sidelines. We don't want to bring them into the fight. Have you been to Turkey recently? Or Turkey?
Yeah, 4 months ago.
Everybody there loves Israel, right? The population is overwhelmingly supportive of the Israelis, right?
There's Israeli flags everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. So our friend Erdogan is the master fence straddler. You know, he says, well, okay, you know, what are you going to give me? Well, you know.
This is the Godfather now. This is the Godfather.
I'll give you some F-35s, you know, you got to play ball with us. Okay, you give me the F-35s, there'll be peace. What do you think you're dealing with? That's the level of discourse right now. The only thing is that our friend Erdogan is much smarter than Donald. Because just because Erdogan says, fine, we'll sit on the sidelines, you know, we won't involve ourselves, but I have to talk to the population, I have to be on the right side of the issue, but we won't do anything, at least until he feels he has to or wants to. And that's coming, and the Israelis know that. When I was in Israel in 2013, I think it was 2013, was the anniversary of the 73 war. I said, I know all of you are worried about Iran. You're concerned about Iran. But, you know, historically, Iran is not a state with whom you have to have hostilities. In fact, the opposite is the case. Iran is the most inclined to cooperate with the West. And you and Iran share similar interests and some of the same opponents. So I said, I think you should start to look carefully at the one true potential existential threat to Israel that exists in the region. And that is the Turkish state. And everyone looked at me as though I was crazy. And I said, now, you and the Iranians can lob missiles and bombs at each other, but the Iranians can't invade Israel. The Turks can invade Israel. And you are living on territory that the Ottomans governed for hundreds of years. Don't you remember? And you could have heard a pin drop in the audience, but ultimately, after it was over, several people came up and said, you know, you're making a good point. They were depending upon, anyway, you know, Ataturk, you know, they were looking at Turkey through the lens of Ataturk. And I was trying to tell them, you know, Ataturk is still revered, he's respected, but this is not Ataturk's Turkey anymore. The Turks have made a choice. They know who they are. They're not Europeans. They're Turks. Their roots are in the Middle East, in Islam, and in Central Asia, not in Europe. So this whole NATO thing, this whole facade of NATO is very flimsy. The Turks are not going to march out of it voluntarily, but they're not going to pay a great deal of attention to it if it's not in their interest to do so. And I think we need to understand that. And I think the Israelis have figured it out. Now, threatening to attack Turkey is a dumb idea. I don't know why they're talking publicly that way, except that they're suffering from what appears to be a sense of racial prejudice, racial supremacy, cultural supremacy, and extreme arrogance on a scale that I don't think I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what's brought this on, but I think it's control of us. They feel that they have such complete control of us that they can say or do anything they want. I think that President Trump was doing two things. He was saying, come on, Erdogan, stick with us, stay out of this war, and we'll do this. And on the other hand, he's saying to the Israelis, don't push the Turks.